recently, it's been all over the true crime community. People have been talking about the FBI going back to the Idaho4 home, 1122 King Road, Queen Road, whatever it is. They were back there, and they were there for 2 days collecting imagery. They were taking pictures with their little laser things from Faro, and creating a map. They're going to be making a 3D or 4D and 3D. From what I've seen is they can make this 3D model where like the jurors can put on goggles and it's like virtual reality. Like you're there. And they also are making like a 4D like physical model, like a dollhouse, that they're going to bring into the court to really sell their narrative. And
didn't we talked about bringing this up again because we've already talked about it once, but apparently there was like some additional information and stuff coming out, right? Is that why you're bringing it up again?
So I'm bringing it up because of random things I've heard talked about, and also they weren't only doing the image scans, they were doing like auditory acoustic testing too.
Oh, yeah.
So I wanted to look at that a little bit, but let's go over exactly what was going on, what I've heard throughout the community, and that is, so I watched something from Long Crime, which had Colin Schmidt, a retired FBI agent. I also listened to some Duty Ron, who covered this extensively with an expert that literally works for Faro, or at least did, or something. He works with this technology every day.
Okay.
It's his job. He is an expert. And that was interesting to listen to. For sure. Go check out Duty Ron. So far I'm loving his channel. But the reason they're there is the trial is delayed indefinitely. We don't know when the trial's going to be.
Yep.
They're claiming it takes months to process this data and form these models. They said they didn't have this tech before. That's not true, but it is true. So they did have this tech, but it wasn't as good as it is now. There was an updated what is it called?
Like what we talked
updated
about.
Camera, basically, an updated unit
Yep.
that they have now that is even more extensive. It's even better. And what they call that is Faro Premium Scanner. It came out in this past year. It is twice as fast, and it records 2 million points. Okay, these points have an X and Y, Z axis. All these digital points, these data points, per minute. It records 2 million per minute.
Yeah.
Or second. Was it second?
Yeah, it's second.
Oh, no, it's second.
Second.
It's 2 million per second. Yeah, I have it written down. And it's a higher resolution HD camera. So it's better quality, it's way faster, it's recording more points in less time. And they're also mapping the exterior of the home.
Yeah.
Now, a big question everybody had is, well, there's a few questions. For one, the university wanted to tear down this house. The owner sold the house to the university for $1 million. And the university's like, listen, knock it down. Prosecution, defense, they all signed off on it. And the family, especially Gonzalez family, protested. And so did a lot of other people. Like, this is a huge piece of evidence. Why would you tear it down? Yeah. So now the Gonzalez family and Coronado family is coming out like, told ya, it's not important until it's important. Like, why not just keep it till the trial's over? In case you need it.
Yeah.
So that's one. Two, apparently this house is dangerous.
That's what they're claiming.
That is what is being claimed. So here, I have an email from Bill Thompson. That also is another thing that's coming into question. So apparently there were some cleaning agents used that can be hazardous after the fact. Asbestos may have even been found in the home. Because they removed pieces of the home. So this email says, I'm only going to read the highlighted portion. But it says the scene has been substantially altered from its condition at the time of the homicides, including removal of relevant property and furnishings, removal of some structural items such as wallboard and flooring, and subjected to extensive chemical application, creating a potential health hazard. There are some of the reasons that we have concluded that a jury view will not be appropriate. So one thing that was also mentioned is, are they collecting physical evidence this time around?
Yeah, I mean, I know we talked about this when it very first came out, and I've heard a few people talk about that we didn't know at first. So I wonder if it only happened like on the second or third day that the FBI was there, that they're taking out a whole bunch of stuff.
So get this.
And for me, that's like the most interesting thing.
So I haven't seen any footage of like a news station that sat there and filmed the whole thing. But Colin Schmidt, the retired FBI agent on Law and Crime, did say that when they go back in to do something like this, he would expect them to do a sweep of the home and collect more physical evidence. He said there's a very low likelihood that they will find anything because it could be contaminated, also it's been cleaned, like they've already went through this home multiple times. It's pretty unlikely they'll find anything, but they will try. And they will do that before the scans is what he said, but I don't know. But the other weird thing is apparently this home is hazardous, right? Well, none of the people going in this home were wearing protective equipment.
Yeah,
they weren't wearing
masks.
They weren't wearing like gloves. They weren't wearing booties. Like it's not. That's odd.
Yeah.
Why are they not wearing anything protective? Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, that is interesting. I'm not sure. I know that when we were talking about this on stream, last week, that's what a few people had mentioned about the asbestos, and I didn't think it was possible, but apparently the information I had was off. Apparently there were houses that had it in up until like 92 or 94 or something like that. So my assumption is when I was doing research on the asbestos they stopped using was the really hazardous kind that was used as insulation, that once it got in the air, that's it. Like, you're in trouble. All of that had to be taken out of all these places, and that stopped being used in the 60s and 70s. But asbestos in general, like in paint, in things, didn't stop being used until like the early 90s. But that asbestos is not, it doesn't get into the air like the other stuff does, so it's different.
Okay, well that's good to know. My question obviously is, if it's hazardous enough that you won't bring the jury, then why aren't they wearing protective equipment? But also, it's standard to wear protective gear at a crime scene. And on Duty Ron, he or one of his experts on that panel said they absolutely should have been wearing it.
Yeah.
They should have been.
Always, period.
Yes, they should have been. So I don't know what is up with that, but... So,
I mean, the second you don't wear protective gear at all, which I'm curious, we saw the video of those cowboys, right? Without going too tin hat here, we love Drip Drop, Crime Circus, love it. And he asked that question and talked about them coming to the house late at night and all that. Were they wearing booties? Were they wearing masks? Because the second you allow people in there without booties, without masks, without anything, you cannot take any more evidence. It is going to be tainted. We're talking about trace DNA here. Like, trace DNA.
Yeah, but see, the thing is that was mentioned by Colin Schmidt, and he said one thing, okay, with this 3D model, he said any of the models, with this investigation, with them collecting this evidence, he said they are, for one, going to sell the narrative of, like, how Bryan could have done any of this. You know, how did he get in the home so fast? How did people not hear him? How did this happen? How did that happen? They're going to sell it using these models. But also, if the defense, which they probably will, bring up cross-contamination. There's an 8-hour window where 911 wasn't called. There's the situation with the FBI going in without protective equipment. Like, you know what I mean? There's several situations like this.
Yeah.
He said he can also use those to... They can use those to prove how, like, there's a low likelihood for cross-contamination because they'll show how people moved throughout the house. And the other point of this is to answer questions in the juror's head before... the jurors' questions before they ever even ask them or think them.
So is he trying to say, to play devil's advocate? Because, look, nobody in the world should accept somebody telling you what something is. Even with our viewers and us, I don't ever want anyone to feel like I'm telling you how it is. Look, we aren't teaching you. We are all learning together.
Right.
I do not know it all. I know nothing. And I'm only learning with you guys as we go through this.
Yes, we all are. Yes.
That idea, it's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, so if the state can prove that there's a low likelihood for contamination, then them not wearing gloves, them not...
Oh, yeah, that's where I was going. Go ahead.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
the court can rule that doesn't matter.
What I was going to say, where I was going with that before I prefaced it, is no one should ever just take anything at face value. So if the prosecution comes in and says, hey, we'll show you where everyone walked. Okay, do you have evidence?
Yeah, like, that's not something you can know.
Yeah, are you just expecting me to allow you to draw a line where people walked without having any proof? That's absurd.
Yeah, I agree.
That is absurd. That is the opposite of science. That is the opposite of proof.
Yeah.
So I hope that it doesn't go that direction. Because, jeez.
Yeah, right. I know. I get what you're saying. And, I mean,
all we can
go
nothing.
off... No, because all we can go off is the statements of people that were in the home and where they say they went, but they're also in a super traumatic, crazy situation. They're not going to remember every little thing they touched or where they went. Like, they probably will remember quite a bit. And you also have to rely on the fact that they're telling you the truth. So I don't feel like that would convince me that much, but apparently...
It's just not acceptable. It's not even about whether somebody would accept it. It's not acceptable, regardless who anybody is. Nobody should ever take anything at face value. That is the point to a trial. That is the point to evidence. That is the reason for it.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to take me at face value. If you're watching this and I say something and I sound sure about it, like, I would never be offended if someone was like, really, Brendan, are you sure? Show me.
Yeah, no, of course.
What? Of course.
That retired FBI agent Schmidt also said that he thinks the prosecutors obviously feel this is vital to their case, and that's why the FBI is there. So, also... with the acoustic thing, okay?
This is the most important piece. This and the stuff coming out, I think.
This is what's interesting, because them doing audio testing, I wanted to know, what does that look like? What does that even mean? They're doing acoustic testing.
See how sound travels.
Well, yeah, to see, that's exactly what it probably is to see how sound travels through the house. How could Bryan Kohberger have committed this crime and other people on the bottom floor or the second floor not heard it? How could Dylan have heard what was going on in Xana's room? How could that camera over on the other side of that home next door hear things that were going on inside the home? Like, they're going to be testing these things. So what do they do to even test that? Because everything, when I was looking up acoustic forensic testing, they don't even talk about how they test the acoustics of a building. They talk about legitimizing already things that were recorded. There are certain kinds of fingerprints in every recording that can be analyzed, and it also helps determine authenticity, things like that. But with a building, so I just looked up, how do you test the acoustics in a building? So what they do is it's all based off of impact noises. They use a noise generator called a tapping machine. And what it does is it's calibrated to provide the same impact on the ground and emit sounds at the same frequency regardless of manufacturer. It is comprised of aligned hammers of equal mass, successively striking the ground from a determined height and a precise speed. Under test conditions, the machine is placed on the floor that one wants to study, and a sonometer. Mm-hmm. There we go. It came out right that time. Is installed in the room below and captures the sounds emitted by the tapping machine. So imagine they put that little tapping machine in Maddie's room and then put the sonometer in Dylan's room.
Yeah.
And then that will like show the reverberations, how the sound travels throughout the house. The other interesting thing... It's
just a flawed test, though.
Why do you say that?
Because there's nothing in there. And they were removing carpet, which makes it even less true.
Where was there carpet in the home?
So multiple people have covered this, that when the FBI went in this most recent time, they removed tons of additional items like carpet. I don't know where there's carpet. I don't know. It doesn't show us. So this is just based off what's being talked about. And they removed flooring. They removed certain pieces of walls. They removed all kinds of stuff. So my question is, why? What were they looking for? Were they trying to get a certain result from this acoustics test? And the way they do that is to create more hard surfaces. Now, I'm not trying to go tin hat here, but I'm trying to think of ideas that align with the fact that they're there to do video and acoustic in a building that no longer would be an acceptable test for video and acoustic.
Well, it would be if they had the previous scans for only the visual part. So for the visual part, they can use those previous ones and pictures of the home to re-render furniture, where the bodies were, things like that. And actually, in a lot of crime scenes, it's actually ideal to do a scan while the bodies are there. And then after they're gone.
They do that. That's what they do.
They do.
Yeah.
So, but with the acoustic testing, you're right. Think about if you've ever moved out of a home, all your furniture's out, you go back in there, it's empty, and it echoes. There's so much reverberation.
In this studio, you guys can't see, but we have the sound squares all over the place so that we don't get echoing in our mics. And that's exactly what it's there for, the grass, the walls,
textured.
the different areas we're shooting at, anything texture that absorbs sound. So it's going to be a flawed test. Why?
You're right.
I think that they're just there trying to either strengthen the prosecution's argument or disprove the defense.
Okay, so let's dive a little bit more into the acoustic stuff. So the analysis gives them a final result. It says, okay, the data is compiled according to the principles issued by the ASTM standards. The final result is expressed in a sound reduction index. Example, IIC58. I'm guessing that's some kind of measurement. The latter indicates the amount of noise that the complete floor ceiling structure has attenuated. So the higher the result, the greater the acoustic efficiency. Mm-hmm. It says, although acoustics is a precise science, the acoustic performance of a building remains difficult to predict. Each floor, ceiling, building assembly vibrates at different frequencies, and the slightest change in the density of the materials used, the quality of the contacts between them, or the order in which they are positioned, for sure changes the result. And also, here's another thing that they do with acoustic testing, is they can test the integrity of different materials in a home.
Yes.
By reverberating sound through them.
Yep. So one thing that I just looked up, because I looked up the IIC58, is so I think that they must have done multiple tests, because while you're talking about how that sound travels in a way, like let's say in the room where upstairs on the third floor where the crime happened, they put this device up there for the tapping, making sound, whatever, and then they put the one in Dylan's room to see how it picks up that sound. They also do another test that taps directly on the floor to see how that sound comes through. That's what I said. Oh, okay. But I thought you only talked about one test. Those are two different tests.
Oh.
So there's one that tracks the sound going through
the sonometer
floor, and then there's one that will see how sound travels through the house. The one tapping on the floor is not going to do that test. It's the one...
That's what I said. There's the tapping machine, there's the sonometer.
Okay.
There's two different machines that are placed in the home to see how it's traveling and reverberating.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm curious how they are going to do that with material missing from the home and get any kind of... I feel like it's not even possible to get any kind of accurate result unless they did this testing while everything was still there too, which...
Yeah, I don't know. I have theories, though, because to me, this is very shady. It is strange. It is that there's this refocus on the house, and I don't know if you guys remember, you saw the first video that we talked about this, but when we brought this up the first time, I was like, there's nothing weird about it. They just want to make sure everything is good. And I'm a firm believer in do something twice and fail none. You know what I mean? So they could just be there doing it twice. But the more I've thought about it, the more information I've found. We have multiple medias, including Bryan Enton, who's there on scene in Idaho, Nancy Wayne Gracie, who talks directly with some of the law enforcement officers and FBI officers that are there. Both of them have talked about FBI taking a bunch of items out of the home this most recent time. So, obviously I don't have a picture, but I tend to believe those things when they're there, because why would they make that up? There is no benefit in story there. None whatsoever.
No.
So, maybe they were there and they just didn't record that part because they were asked not to. I don't know. But why take more stuff out? Why take carpeting out? Why take flooring out? Like, I'm going to go tin hat here for a second. Is drip drop right and there's a dang tunnel connected? Are they digging for a tunnel? Like, what is going on here? That you're taking out walls, that you're taking out carpet, that you're taking out flooring. What is going on?
So what the FBI agent says is they might be looking for like microparticle evidence, like touch DNA, hairs.
Oh, don't get me started.
Hairs and fiber. Do you think they're collecting big parts of the house to like go take it and test it for microparticles?
No. Look at all the stuff they gave away back to the families.
I know.
No. All of that stuff would have had it on it.
All that stuff is
They've gathered no evidence, and that is my next topic. When I talk about Idaho4, that is my topic. They gathered nothing. Zip.
So that's pretty much a wrap for the FBI back at the home. What do you guys think about the acoustic testing? Like how it can be used to test building, materials. How they're measuring this acoustic reverberation throughout the house and how sound travels without any of the furniture, without any of, with literally chunks of wall missing, chunks of floor, not the same flooring everywhere. I mean, that makes such a difference.
Yeah, no beds, no clothing, no
things
shoes.
That will absorb the sound, absorb the vibrations aren't there anymore.
Right.
But don't you think that will give skewed results towards Dylan had to have heard something? It'll reverberate more, meaning sound is going to travel through the house more. So how are they going to account for that?
I don't know. Okay, so I don't
So
know
what
if
is
we
the
were
point?
very clear in that idea. So there's this idea that, remember, Dylan has exculpatory evidence in the Bryan Kohberger
Bethany
case.
does.
I'm sorry, Bethany has exculpatory evidence in the Bryan Kohberger case, and there's this idea floating around that the reason why they're there doing these acoustics is to combat something Bethany knows. Maybe she heard something and thought that it was a certain person's voice. And if I'm the prosecution and I'm playing shady and not just wanting to be everything transparent to pad my case, would it make sense that I would go in there and get acoustics to disprove a statement that was made by somebody? You know what I mean? What's interesting, why you're bringing this up, 2 people have come out talking about that house. You have Steve G and another person that lived there who said, those walls are paper thin. You can literally hear everything. Then you have this other man who stayed on the first floor who said, you can't hear anything. Nothing. That house is like a padded room. And the viewers will see the pictures. I'll pull them, but
that would make sense for the bottom floor because of all the ground surrounding half of it. That actually, and those other 2 floors are technically on a different ground.
Yeah, yes,
they're elevated.
They are.
Yeah, it's weird.
Kind of. I mean, there's only one per half, right? That house is like 2 different halves built at 2 different times, but where the slab is, where the ground is, where the base of that house is on 2 different levels or whatever, and it's only those 2 different levels. Everything is built up from there, you know what I mean? So 1 2 stories, 1 2 stories, making 3 total, but
if you lived in that house, you could dig your own tunnel.
Dude, I would. That is totally what I would do. I think tunneling would be awesome, but I just go back to the reasons why. The more I think about this FBI visit, the less normal it feels. I felt like, okay, everything's normal. If I was the FBI, I would go back and get another test too, just to be sure, to guarantee my results. If it gets questioned in court, no judge or no prosecutor, no defense, we did this test twice. I'm confident in these results. There's nothing wrong with that. But now they're removing things like walls and floors and subfloor and all this stuff. That is strange. That is really strange. While doing audio tests
that can't be accurate. At least for what the house was in that time, which is when it's relevant and important. If they were going to do acoustic testing, they should have done it back when everything was still there.
Maybe this is going to help the defense, and they don't even realize it.
Maybe.
That the defense is going to come back and say, hey, there's no way these 2 people didn't hear what was going on. And we can reenact that. We have the test, so what we can do is put headphones on the jury and play the decibels of what that sound traveled as and what you would have heard.
Do a recreation of the audio.
Of the not the crime, but just how loud it would have been.
People saying words
Dylan.
And how loud, yeah. That's interesting. Okay.
Could that end up helping the defense in this? If you're an expert on these things, you guys, and you're watching this, I know it was your story, but reach out to us. I want to talk to somebody that knows these things.
Me
I
too.
think the science is kind of what our channel is becoming known for, is the deep dives into like the statistical probabilities around some of this science and things. And I don't know anything about the decibels and how they travel and how that could benefit a case, how it could benefit the prosecution, disprove an eyewitness account, a statement. You know, I don't know, but I would love to talk to somebody who does.
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely. I want to know how this measurement, sound reduction index, is also interesting to me too. Like, how is that calculated? It's interesting. That's why I wanted to find it. I was searching for this on a forensically, and that was a mistake because they don't release anything about how they would do something like this at all. So you have to look into how like sound experts go into a building and you know, they
Just
measure
looking
the
at
acoustics.
Acoustics around like what told me that ICC or IIC or whatever was all about flooring.
Yep.
And it has all the details on it. So super helpful.
Yeah. We'll have to dig into that more, but I thought that was I don't know where this is going. It's interesting, and I don't know where it's going. I don't know what the point of it is. I don't know who it's going to benefit to do that kind of testing, especially since, like we said, there's no way it could be accurate.
Yeah, I agree. And the more I think about it, the more like tin hat-ish this idea can go with them returning with some of these additional tests. It's really strange.
Was the acoustic test, would that have something to do with the tunnel?
I have no clue. Are they trying to identify where a tunnel could, would, or should be?
Right.
I don't know.
Weird, huh?
Yeah, it's strange.
But we want to know what you think.
Yes.
So definitely let us know in the comments.
Yes.